All right, today we are diving into a really powerful, true story about survival. It's a journey that goes deep into the best and worst parts of human nature. The capacity for gut wrenching betrayal, but also for this incredible, extraordinary resilience.
This quote from the memoir, wow, it just perfectly sets the stage for everything we're about to get into. This isn't just a story about trauma, it's really a testament to the kind of strength you can build when you're pushed to the absolute limit. So let's go back in time. Picture this. It's the year 2000. The narrator describes her life as, well, pretty much perfect. She's living in this small, tight-knit community where everything has a kind of gentle, predictable rhythm. A life that was all about simplicity and just being content. And right at the absolute heart of this life, her 6 dogs. And the memoir makes it so clear. These weren't just pets. No way. They were family. They were her protectors, her confidants. Each one had this huge, distinct personality, and they really were the core of her entire world. But, as the story starts to hint, that piece was really fragile. The first little cracks started to show up in a lifelong friendship she had with a woman named Sarah. She started noticing these subtle but really unsettling changes, missed calls, vague excuses, and this weird agitation from Sarah whenever the dogs were around. And this is where the story gets absolutely fascinating. Long before the narrator had any conscious idea of the threat, her dogs did. Their intuition was basically the first line of defense against a danger she couldn't even see yet. I mean, the contrast here was just stark. While her friend Sarah was showing all these classic signs of deception, the dog's behavior became super protective. Shadow would growl, and the others would literally form a barrier around her. They could sense the lie underneath it all in a way that we humans, we often just miss. And their intuition wasn't just about sensing a bad vibe. It became this active, life-saving alarm system. Shadow's nonstop barking one day led her to discover a tamper lock. And even more dramatically, Ink, who was normally the playful one, just flat out refused to get in the car, which led to her finding a tampered wire by the fuel tank. An explosion was literally avoided. Their instincts were saving her life. So all that tension finally snapped on the night of the attack. The air was just heavy with dread, and when an attacker burst through the door, the dogs just erupted, instantly forming a protective wall. Even as they were being brutally injured, they fought back. Shadow acted like a human-sized shield to protect her. The physical assault was just horrific, but what came after brought this second, much more insidious kind of attack. The police were dismissive, and soon enough, the very community that should have been her support system turned against her, which just bred this intense isolation and fear. The crisis just spiraled out of control so fast. First the attack, then a botched investigation, and then the community turns on her with these bizarre accusations of witchcraft. It all came to a head in a huge legal battle that uncovered a whole conspiracy to steal her land orchestrated by a local businessman named Silas Thorne. After surviving all of that, you would hope, you would pray, the worst was over. But the memoir shows us that another storm was gathering on the horizon. 17 years later, a completely new betrayal would test her resilience all over again. So in 2017, she faces this new betrayal. And this one was quieter, but in its own way just as devastating. The slow, painful unraveling of her marriage. You see, where the first attack was this violent invasion from the outside, this was an internal collapse of the one relationship she thought was her safe haven. And this second wave of trauma, it just took a massive physical toll, piling on top of the old wounds. Her medical records from that time actually became part of the story, documenting relentless insomnia, major weight loss, and these debilitating migraines. It's such a stark reminder that the stress of a shattered trust can physically break you down from the inside. So how did she even start to navigate that? Well, therapy was absolutely essential. Things like CBT helped her reshape the negative thought patterns that were spiraling from this new grief, while EMDR was crucial for dialing down the intensity of traumatic memories from both periods of her life. And things like mindfulness and yoga became these vital tools for grounding herself and managing the physical toll of all that stress. And this really brings us to the core of the whole story. How do you rebuild after being so completely broken? So we're shifting now from the events themselves to the actual practical and spiritual tools the narrator used to heal, and really to build a brand new foundation for her life. Her faith, which had once been this kind of quiet thing in the background, completely transformed. It became this active, fierce dialogue. The memoir shows that questioning God, wrestling with injustice, that's not a sign of weak faith. It can actually be the very thing that forges a deeper, more resilient spiritual bond. The story also gives us this powerful new way to look at forgiveness. It makes it crystal clear that forgiveness is not about letting people off the hook for what they did. Not at all. It's about consciously choosing to release the burden of anger and resentment for your own liberation. It's a tool for your freedom. And beyond the spiritual work, healing required a really practical blueprint. This meant conscious self-care, prioritizing sleep and nutrition. It meant using creative outlets like painting and journaling to get the emotions out. And crucially, it meant learning how to set healthy boundaries. Finding a support group was also a game changer, breaking that isolation by connecting with others who actually got it. Ultimately, though, the most profound shift was a mental one. It was that conscious choice to rewrite her own story, to define herself not by the betrayals she suffered, but by her resilient response to them. The scars were still there, sure, but they became like badges of armor, markers of her growth. This journey from unimaginable suffering to a place of peace and purpose really leaves us with a powerful question. It reminds us that healing is a constant evolution, and it asks each of us, how can we find strength in our own ashes and reshape our own stories?